Her face is one of the most recognized in history, yet her life remains an enigma. The delicate curve of her cheekbones, the perfect symmetry of her features, and that mesmerizing gaze frozen in stone for over 3,000 years. This is the image the world knows as Nefertiti, the queen whose beauty has become immortal. But behind this flawless visage lies a story wrapped in shadows, a tale of power, ambition, and disappearance that has puzzled historians for over a century. The famous bust of Nefertiti, discovered in 1912 and now resting in Berlin's Neues Museum, is more than an artifact. It is a symbol. To some, it represents elegance and feminine grace. To others, it is a mask hiding a far more complex and dangerous truth. For Nefertiti was no ordinary queen. She stood beside Pharaoh Akhenaten during one of the most radical religious revolutions in Egyptian history, challenging millennia of tradition and shaking the foundations of power. And then, without warning, she vanished from the historical record. Did she die in obscurity, or did she rise to become pharaoh in her own right, ruling Egypt under another name? This is the mystery that has obsessed scholars and fueled countless theories. Did Nefertiti manipulate history, seize ultimate power, and even rule Egypt as a pharaoh? Or is her legendary beauty the ultimate disguise, concealing secrets we have yet to uncover? The search for answers begins in the heart of ancient Egypt, where beauty met power and history was rewritten. To understand Nefertiti's mystery, we must first journey back to the golden sands of ancient Egypt in the 14th century BCE, during the height of the 18th dynasty. This was an era of immense wealth, sprawling temples, and divine kingship. Egypt stood as a superpower, and its rulers were gods on earth. It was in this world that Nefertiti, whose name means the beautiful one has come, rose to prominence. But who was she before the crown? Surprisingly, her origins remain uncertain. Unlike many royal consorts, Nefertiti's parentage is shrouded in debate. Some scholars believe she was the daughter of Ai, a powerful court official who would later become pharaoh. Others argue she might have been a foreign princess, perhaps from Mitanni, married into the Egyptian royal house to seal political alliances. The absence of clear records only adds to the intrigue surrounding her. What we do know is that Nefertiti married Amenhotep IV, a prince destined to rule one of the mightiest kingdoms on earth. When he ascended the throne around 1353 BCE, Egypt seemed stable, grounded in centuries of traditions centered on the worship of a vast pantheon led by Amun, the chief deity. Yet beneath this veneer of stability, cracks were forming, cracks that Nefertiti and her husband would exploit to reshape Egypt forever. The union between Nefertiti and Amenhotep IV was more than a royal marriage. It was a partnership of equals, an anomaly in a world dominated by male power. Artistic depictions from this period show the queen standing shoulder to shoulder with her husband, often the same size as the king, a visual statement of authority rarely granted to Egyptian queens. Together, they conceived a vision that would upend the ancient order, the worship of one supreme god, Aten, the radiant sun disk. This was no mere theological shift. It was a political earthquake. For centuries, the temples of Amun had amassed enormous wealth and influence, rivaling that of the throne itself. By elevating Aten above all other gods, Amenhotep IV, and by extension, Nefertiti, struck at the heart of this powerful establishment. The couple's bold reforms were accompanied by a dramatic move, the founding of a new capital city, Akhenaten, modern-day Amarna, dedicated entirely to Aten. Here, under the blazing sun, they built grand temples and palaces, crafting a city that reflected their revolutionary ideals. It was in these sunlit courtyards that Nefertiti's influence became unmistakable. She appeared in scenes of worship alongside the king, offering sacrifices to Aten, a role traditionally reserved for pharaohs. Was Nefertiti simply a devoted wife, or was she the co-architect of this radical new order? Evidence suggests the latter. In inscriptions and reliefs, she is often shown wearing the blue crown typically reserved for kings, a potent symbol of power. At times, she is depicted alone in acts of worship, her name enclosed in royal cartouches, a privilege usually granted only to the pharaoh. For nearly 2 decades, Nefertiti and Amenhotep IV, who would soon rename himself Akhenaten, servant of Aten, stood at the center of Egypt's most audacious experiment. But as the old gods fell and Aten rose, the seeds of conflict began to sprout, setting the stage for one of history's greatest mysteries. To grasp the magnitude of what Nefertiti and Akhenaten attempted, one must first understand the spiritual and political landscape of ancient Egypt. For over 1,000 years, the Egyptian world had revolved around a pantheon of gods: Amun, Osiris, Isis, Ra, each representing aspects of life and death, fertility and kingship. The priesthood of Amun, in particular, wielded immense power, controlling vast lands and treasuries. Pharaohs, though divine, were often forced into uneasy alliances with these priests. Akhenaten's vision shattered this balance. Around his 5th regnal year, he proclaimed Aten, the sun disk that illuminated all life, as the sole god worthy of worship. This was a revolution unlike anything Egypt had ever witnessed. In one stroke, centuries of tradition were cast aside. Temples to Amun were closed, their treasures confiscated. The very name of Amun was chiseled from monuments, erased from the collective memory of a civilization. Where does Nefertiti fit into this drama? Far from being a passive observer, she was at the heart of the Aten cult. Depictions in Amarna art show her making offerings, performing rituals, and even striking enemies in scenes of smiting, a gesture of royal authority traditionally reserved for kings. Her 6 daughters, born to Akhenaten, are frequently shown basking in the rays of Aten, a divine family sanctified by the sun god himself. Some scholars argue that Nefertiti's role transcended even that of a great royal wife. She may have been elevated to co-regent, sharing the throne with Akhenaten during the height of the Atenist revolution. In some inscriptions, her titles approach those of kingship. Was this symbolic, or a sign that she wielded real political power? Akhenaten's monotheistic shift was not simply a matter of faith. It was a calculated strike against the entrenched power of the Amun priesthood. By dismantling their temples and concentrating worship in Aten, the royal couple sought to centralize authority in the hands of the throne. This was a bold, perhaps reckless gamble. The priests of Amun were not mere religious figures. They were kingmakers, economic giants who controlled the lifeblood of the Nile's resources. The reaction was swift and silent at first. Resistance brewed in the shadows, even as Akhenaten and Nefertiti reveled in their sun-drenched utopia at Amarna. But Egypt was a land steeped in tradition, and the sweeping erasure of its gods struck at the core of its identity. For the ordinary Egyptian, the gods were not abstract concepts. They were protectors, guarantors of the afterlife. To deny them was to court chaos. Isfet, the very antithesis of cosmic order. As the Atenist experiment reached its zenith, cracks began to appear. Plagues ravaged the land. Foreign threats loomed. The empire strained under internal dissent. And then, without warning, Nefertiti, queen, priestess, co-ruler, vanished from the record. Was her disappearance the result of palace intrigue? Did she fall from grace? Or did she ascend to even greater heights, taking the throne as Pharaoh in disguise? The answers lie buried in the shifting sands of history, a mystery that has fueled one of the most enduring debates in Egyptology. History, like the Nile, often flows with clarity, until it suddenly vanishes into the desert. So it is with Nefertiti. For more than a decade, she stood beside Akhenaten, dazzling Egypt as queen, priestess, and perhaps co-ruler. Her image was everywhere, carved into temples, painted on walls, etched into the memory of an empire. Then abruptly, around year 12 of Akhenaten's reign, the record falls silent. Nefertiti disappears. No grand funeral inscriptions, no lavish tomb announcing her passage to eternity, no triumphal scenes of divine ascension. Nothing. It is as if the most famous woman in Egypt simply dissolved into the desert wind. Egyptologists first noticed this vanishing act in the Amarna records. Reliefs that once showed the royal family under Aten's blazing rays suddenly omit Nefertiti's image. Her name, once inscribed in cartouches alongside Akhenaten, ceases to appear in official texts. What happened? Theories abound. Some believe she died of plague, a common scourge in the crowded city of Akhenaten. Letters from the Amarna archives speak of epidemics ravaging the region, possibly claiming members of the royal court. If Nefertiti succumbed, Her burial may have been hastily arranged, perhaps in a tomb later repurposed for another ruler. Yet no definitive burial site has ever been found, despite decades of searching in the Valley of the Kings and Amarna's necropolis. Others argue that her death, if it occurred, would hardly have gone unnoticed. Nefertiti was too prominent, too powerful for her demise to pass without commemoration. This leads to a more tantalizing possibility. She didn't die at all. She changed names and titles. Nefertiti, the queen who became king? Among the most compelling theories is that Nefertiti reinvented herself as a pharaoh after Akhenaten's death. Some inscriptions from this turbulent period reference a mysterious ruler, Nefertiti. This name is strikingly similar to Nefertiti's full royal title, Nefertiti, which she bore during her queenship. Could Nefertiti and Nefertiti be the same person? Several pieces of evidence suggest so. Relief fragments show a ruler performing kingly duties, yet with features and titles hinting at a female identity. Some cartouches even contain epithets like effective for her husband, an odd phrase for a male king, but fitting if Nefertiti ruled to uphold Akhenaten's legacy. Yet the story grows more complex with the shadowy figure of Smenkhkare, another ephemeral ruler who appears in the historical record around this time. Was Smenkhkare a son of Akhenaten? A younger brother? Or, most controversially, another identity adopted by Nefertiti to legitimize her reign? If Nefertiti did assume a throne name, it would not be without precedent. Hatshepsut, centuries earlier, transformed herself from queen to king, donning the regalia and even the false beard of Pharaoh. Did Nefertiti follow in her footsteps, rewriting the rules of power in a kingdom teetering on chaos? The DNA connection and the missing mummy. The question of Nefertiti's fate has driven modern Egyptology into the realm of forensic science. In 2010, a groundbreaking DNA study led by Dr. Zahi Hawass attempted to identify members of the Amarna royal family. The so-called younger lady mummy, found in tomb KV35 in the Valley of the Kings, emerged as a key figure. Genetic analysis revealed she was the mother of Tutankhamun and the daughter of Amenhotep III and Queen Tiye, making her Akhenaten's full sister. But was she Nefertiti? The evidence says no. The younger lady cannot be Nefertiti, who was not a daughter of Amenhotep III. This only deepens the mystery. If Nefertiti was not Tutankhamun's mother, what became of her body? Where is the tomb of one of history's most famous queens? Some researchers point to tomb KV21, where two female mummies await definitive identification. Others believe her burial lies within a hidden chamber behind Tutankhamun's tomb, a theory famously proposed by British Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves. In 2015, Reeves suggested that anomalies in the tomb's walls might conceal doorways to Nefertiti's resting place. Ground-penetrating radar hinted at voids beyond the plaster, igniting global excitement. Yet follow-up scans produced inconclusive results, leaving the theory unresolved. Vanishing for survival or for power? Why would Nefertiti disappear so completely? One explanation is political necessity. The Aten experiment was collapsing. After Akhenaten's death, Egypt plunged into crisis. Famine, foreign incursions, and internal strife demanded a restoration of order. The old gods were clawing their way back into favor. For Nefertiti, clinging to the Atenist identity might have been a death sentence. Perhaps she shed her name like a serpent's skin, adopting a new identity, Nefertiti or Smenkhkare, to navigate the treacherous waters of succession. Alternatively, if she resisted compromise, her enemies may have erased her from history, chipping her name from walls, consigning her to oblivion. Ancient Egypt was ruthless to those who fell from grace. Memory itself could be a weapon. And yet, Nefertiti has not been forgotten. Her enigmatic smile gazes out from the bust in Berlin, defying the silence of millennia. But that famous face, serene, perfect, eternal, offers no answers, only questions. Did she die quietly in Amarna, buried in an unmarked tomb as her husband's dream crumbled? Did she wield the crook and flail as Pharaoh ruling Egypt in disguise? Or does she still lie in a hidden chamber, waiting for the day when modern science pierces the last secrets of the sand? Until then, Nefertiti remains what she has always been, an enigma, a queen who may have fooled the world. When Akhenaten died around 1336 BCE, Egypt stood at a crossroads. The Aten experiment had fractured the nation. Traditional temples lay abandoned. Foreign enemies sensed weakness at the empire's borders. A strong hand was needed to steady the throne, but who would grasp the crook and flail of power? Here the shadows deepen, and the enigma of Nefertiti grows even darker. In the historical record, a new name appears during the final years of Akhenaten's reign: Ankheperure Smenkhkare. The identity of this figure has long puzzled Egyptologists. Was Smenkhkare a son of Akhenaten, perhaps from a secondary wife? A younger brother elevated to co-regent? Or, most provocatively, was Smenkhkare Nefertiti in disguise? The theory that Nefertiti assumed the throne rests on tantalizing clues. Some inscriptions refer to Ankheperure Nefer Aten, a name that fuses elements of Nefertiti's royal title with masculine epithets. Certain artifacts, including a ceremonial box from Tutankhamun's tomb, bear cartouches that originally named Nefer Aten, but were later altered, suggesting an effort to erase her identity from history. Even more striking are depictions of a ruler wearing both male and female regalia, hinting at a transitional figure who blurred gender lines, much like Hatshepsut centuries before. Could this be Nefertiti's final transformation from queen to king? A limestone relief from Amarna, now in the Berlin Museum, shows a monarch adorned in the blue crown of war, traditionally a male symbol, yet with features soft enough to evoke femininity. Other inscriptions contain epithets such as effective for her husband, implying loyalty to Akhenaten's memory, even posthumously. For many scholars, these fragments suggest that after Akhenaten's death, Nefertiti stepped into the vacuum of power, ruling under the guise of Aten or Smenkhkare to protect her husband's legacy and stabilize the realm. If Nefertiti did become pharaoh, her reign was short, perhaps no more than 3 years. During this time, she may have attempted a delicate balancing act, preserving elements of Aten worship while gradually restoring the old gods to appease the powerful Amun priesthood and the traditionalist elite. Then came Tutankhaten, better known as Tutankhamun, a boy of about 9 years, thrust onto the throne. His rise signals the collapse of the Amarna experiment. Aten faded, Amun returned, temples reopened. And with this restoration came a campaign to erase all traces of the heresy and those who led it. Names of Akhenaten, Nefertiti, and their successors were chiseled from monuments, their statues smashed, their memory condemned. Did Tutankhamun's advisors orchestrate this purge to legitimize the young king's rule? Almost certainly. But in the process, they also buried the truth of Nefertiti's final chapter. Was she alive when Tutankhamun ascended? Did she die? Or was she quietly removed, a casualty of political necessity? We may never know. Yet fragments of evidence whisper that for a brief, blazing moment, Nefertiti was more than a queen. She was Pharaoh, the living embodiment of Egypt itself. More than 3,000 years after Nefertiti's disappearance, her face returned to the world and ignited a storm that has never ceased. It was December 6, 1912. In the ruins of Akhenaten, the city built by Akhenaten and Nefertiti, German archaeologist Ludwig Borchardt was leading an excavation. Among the debris of a sculptor's workshop, his team unearthed a masterpiece. A painted limestone bust, perfectly preserved, its colors vivid, its features almost impossibly symmetrical. Borchardt's diary entry that day was almost breathless. Description is useless. One must see her. The bust depicted a woman of stunning beauty, high cheekbones, arched brows, elegant neck, and that unmistakable blue crown. One eye gleamed with inlaid quartz, the other mysteriously unfinished, as if the artist had stopped mid-stroke. Scholars would later identify her beyond doubt: Nefertiti. The artifact was shipped to Germany under murky circumstances and unveiled in Berlin in 1923, sparking worldwide fascination. For the first time, modern eyes beheld the queen whose name had haunted the annals of history. From that moment, Nefertiti became a global icon. Her face graced magazine covers, inspired fashion designers, and even influenced early 20th century concepts of feminine beauty. But as admiration grew, so did questions. Was the bust authentic, or a modern forgery cleverly planted by Borchardt to secure fame? Skeptics pointed to its pristine condition, the absence of inscriptions, and its almost surreal perfection. Some claimed it was too beautiful, too modern to be ancient. Scientific tests, including CT scans and pigment analysis, have largely confirmed its authenticity, revealing layers of gypsum and subtle asymmetries beneath the paint, hallmarks of ancient craftsmanship. Yet the aura of mystery persists, partly because the bust seems more than an artifact. It is a face, lifelike and eternal, staring across millennia with an expression that is at once serene and knowing. The bust's beauty is rivaled only by the controversy surrounding its possession. Egypt has long demanded its return, arguing that it left the country under dubious colonial-era agreements. Germany has refused, citing legal ownership and concerns for its preservation. This tug-of-war has become a symbol of larger debates over cultural heritage, colonial history, and the ethics of archaeology. For Egyptians, Nefertiti is not just a queen, she is a national treasure, a fragment of their soul. For the world, she is an icon of timeless beauty and unresolved mystery. And so, the bust sits in Berlin's Neues Museum, encased in glass, bathed in soft light. Visitors flock to gaze upon her, captivated by that inscrutable smile. But the bust offers no answers. It tells us nothing of her origins, her ambitions, or her fate. It conceals as much as it reveals, like a mask guarding the secrets of a life that changed history. Did those eyes witness the birth of monotheism? Did those lips speak commands as Pharaoh? Or do they mock us from across the ages, silently whispering, "You will never know"? More than 3 millennia have passed since Nefertiti walked the halls of Akhenaten, yet her presence lingers like a whisper across time. Her name adorns museums, books, and films. Her image, immortalized in that iconic bust, has become one of the most reproduced faces in the world, rivaling Cleopatra and even the Mona Lisa in global recognition. But why does Nefertiti captivate us so deeply? Perhaps because she embodies the perfect storm of allure and ambiguity. She was beautiful, yes, but beauty alone does not etch a name into eternity. Nefertiti's power was subtler, more dangerous. She rewrote the rules of her world. She stood beside a pharaoh in an unprecedented partnership, then possibly claimed the throne herself, blurring the lines between queen and king, consort and sovereign. In modern culture, Nefertiti is often cast as the ultimate femme fatale, a woman who outsmarted history. Films, novels, and documentaries paint her as cunning, seductive, and politically astute, a figure who wielded her influence with lethal precision. Yet the truth remains elusive. Was she a visionary who dared to dream of a new order, or a calculating opportunist cloaked in divine radiance? Perhaps what fascinates us most is the silence that follows her name, the unanswered questions, the missing pieces. Every discovery, from dusty relief fragments to high-tech DNA scans, seems to draw us closer, yet the full story forever slips through our fingers. And so we keep searching. For in Nefertiti, beauty and power are not opposites, they are twin blades, cutting across time to remind us of history's greatest seduction: mystery. She has been called the Beautiful One, a queen, a mother, perhaps even a king. Her likeness has stared at us for over a century from behind glass, her painted eyes calm, her smile unfathomable. Yet for all the volumes written in her name, Nefertiti remains an unanswered question, a riddle etched in stone, a whisper on the wind of history. Did she die quietly as Akhenaten's forgotten queen? Did she seize the throne, wearing the regalia of Pharaoh? Or did she vanish into the shadows, her legacy deliberately erased by those who feared her power? We may never know. The sands of Egypt guard their secrets well. But perhaps the truth lies not in the tombs or the temples, not even in the dazzling bust that bears her image, but in the shadows of ambition, where beauty and power collided in one of history's greatest enigmas, a woman who may have fooled the world, and who still refuses to surrender her final secret.